So, we're live. Hello, Laura.
Hello, Stephen.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I am good. Yeah, feel relatively calm despite the fact that we have gone live.
Good. Well, I'm super excited to be talking to you. I'm really grateful that you've given the time, and I'm sure people are going to learn a lot. I've had the privilege and the blessing to meet you online once, twice, and in person once as well. And I think that what you're doing, I haven't seen anybody else doing. There may be other people doing similar things, but I've not come across it. So maybe to just get us going, would you tell us just a little bit about your background and how you find yourself doing what you do today?
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you for having me. And well, I guess about the age of 3, I decided I wanted to be an actor, and that was the pursuit that I had until I actually made it to drama school. And had a little hiccup along the way when I got nodules on my vocal cords, and yeah, had a delay and then had to reapply for drama school. And then, yeah, worked as an actor for a while, encountered what is a really challenging business to be in, and started to kind of struggle a little bit with just my purpose and felt like something was missing, experienced stage fright, constant rejection in that sort of environment, that career. I think it just started to chip away at my sense of self and my confidence. I was teaching dance and drama as well, and noticing how through drama, with children, but just noticing how they would come out of their shell and basically the therapeutic potential of drama and theatre, and became quite interested in mind-body connection. Went off traveling to kind of do a bit of soul searching. They say when you're traveling that you lose yourself to find yourself. And yeah, I discovered meditation and yoga, Reiki. And I first came across biodynamic breathwork. I didn't actually train in it then, but that's when it was first on my radar. Fast forward many years later, I returned to acting and just couldn't find my flow. Decided to train as a drama therapist, which had been on my radar since about 16 when I did my work experience at school. Yeah, trained as a drama therapist, spent 3 years studying a master's in drama therapy, which is a creative arts psychotherapy. So not a talking therapy, but using metaphor and story and role play. And then when I left my training, 3 years, I then still felt like something was missing. And I was working as a drama therapist at the time, and then trained in the breathwork. So that seed that was planted many years before in India, I went back to study. And we were in lockdown at the time, so I studied online initially, and then studied it in person. Felt like I discovered the Holy Grail, and when that happened, I then quit my drama therapy job, and I swore that I would only ever do breath work for the rest of my life, and set up my company, the Meraki Way. And then, proceeded to work with the breath. And over time, the drama therapy has found its way back in. And now, I deliver both modalities because both are needed for various different reasons. And over that time, since I set up the Meraki Way, which is coming on for 2 years, I've been working a lot with actors and performers and artists, singers, musicians, women with ADHD, and a lot of people who have come to me who are experiencing trauma and have been through talking therapy and recognise that it's still there, it's still living in the body. Naming that, okay, they've talked about it for many, many years, so now they're really aware of what's going on with them, but nothing's changed. I've even worked with a lot of talking therapists as well. So yeah, that's kind of what I do. I've just had a week, as you know, away doing another breathwork training. And it really is the Holy Grail. It just blows my mind, and that's why I feel so calm right now.
That's wonderful. I love that story. And I also, like, in my past, I gave up a job I used to work in the software industry in London. I had a really, good career in my 20s, and towards the end of my 20s, I quit, cashed in everything, gave away everything, gave my car to my mom, went to Latin America for a year, and I credit that experience. I still refer back to that. And that was 2000. That was a long time ago. So that thing that travel really does broaden the mind. It really opens you up to things, and it has echoes through your life as well. That really resonated with me. I think, can we just define a couple of terms here? So the first one is, in the title of the talk, we talked about somatic. We used the word somatic.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean to you?
Well, the body. So a somatic therapy would be a body-based therapy.
Yeah. And how do you see that? Maybe the benefits or the differences between that and the talking therapies that you referred to?
Ooh, well, it's quite a big question.
It is a bit, yeah. Sorry about that.
No, and this is what we're here to talk about, and to talk about. I can reference what I notice in my body as we go. It's really okay. So, I mean, talking therapy can be really, really helpful if we've not had our voice heard, if we've not been able to tell our story. If we're talking about, because obviously we're talking about trauma, the somatic approach to trauma release. If we're going to be in talking therapy and talking about our trauma, we then have to go back to the past and talk about something that's either really painful to talk about. It can be really triggering. We can often not really find the words, or it might even be that we can have pre-verbal trauma. And how do we even speak about that? So we might be holding something that is really, really hard to speak about on so many different levels. If we're going to talk about something that was traumatic, well, the body knows no different. So if we're talking about something from the past, of course we're being triggered. The body is then responding as if that event is really happening. So we can re-traumatize in that moment. We also, as we're speaking, have a capacity to use certain words. And, if I say to you, I'm feeling angry, it is just a word. But underneath that, we see the tip of the iceberg, and underneath that is so much more. And what we feel in the body is sensations that is beyond words. How can we quantify anger in the body? We have to go beneath that into the somatic experience in order to connect with how it's living in the body, so that we can start to let go of it. Try and talk our way through it. People say, you can change your mindset about it, but 95% of our thoughts are unconscious. So if we're going to be talking about something consciously, we really need to step into the unconscious, which is what lives in the body, and the patterns and the way that we react or connect or disconnect, the way that we present ourselves in life as well. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Or I was going to keep going.
Absolutely. No, and I want to try and use myself here and try and learn a little bit from what you just said, but also I have a small bit of experience. Maybe I should just explain to people who are listening. We first met because I came to a workshop that you did. I had no idea what biodynamic breathwork was. I just thought it's breathing techniques. I didn't really research it. I showed up, and I had a very big experience in that room. And so, from lay terms, this is what I experienced. You talked us through some techniques. Some of them felt quite relaxing. Some of them felt really active. And then at some point, I was crying. There was like this release of something, and I've never experienced anything quite like that before. The technique of the breathing, the atmosphere in the room, the way that you were talking, allowed that to happen, and me participating in it allowed that to happen. And then you came over, and I remember this like so vividly. I think you said, I'm sure you said something along the lines of, "Is it okay if I put a hand on you?" or something like that. And I was like, "Yeah, whatever, please." And then you said, "What is this?" And I hadn't engaged my brain at all at that point. And I said, it's grief. And as you're talking now, so this is the part where I am trying to use this in the moment. I'm listening to you talking and I'm going back to that moment and I am experiencing this like shortening of breath here. And I'm paying attention to what you're saying, but subconsciously I'm going back to that sensation, that feeling, that, you know, and it is grief. That's what it is. And for people who don't know my story, my partner, actually almost exactly 10 years ago, died, and I was left with 2 children and a complicated, you know, everything. And that's what came back in that moment. And I did not walk in that room at all thinking that anything like that was going to happen. And I've been through quite a lot of talking therapy. So as I tell you, me as a case study, like, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, I clearly remember that moment as well. And I think I will have asked permission to put my hands on, and be able to make contact. And I probably in that moment just brought your awareness to a part of your body that was either frozen or activated. And I will have asked you, what are you feeling? Where are you feeling it? And just by that question, I'm just directing your awareness to what you're feeling in the body. And when we touch on the sensation, it's the sensation that then is the first thing that we feel with anything. We have the sensation, we then have the emotional experience, and then the story that the mind tells and makes meaning. But when we come back to the sensation, it's the most rawest, purest isness of what is there in the here and now. And so, you know, we can go through talking therapy and feel like we've understood it, but the body has an incredible memory, and the body will hold quite a lot for us. And we sometimes don't really even know what we're holding until we touch on it. And, you know, I remember your tears as well. And I think, like you say, it's not an experience like it's not a normal cry when we're crying from the body. It's actually, it feels, and people often say this, if I don't know where this came from, it came from the body. The body's been holding on to that for so long. And eventually either it catches up with us, or we do some work like this, and there's a surrendering that needs to happen to be able to feel the real subtlety of that emotion, that sensation that's living in the body. And when we touch on it and allow it to be released, you know, we can feel the feelings, and you were able to feel that grief and actually just let it go. That may have been held in that, you know, will have been held in your body for all of that time, beyond our awareness. And then if the body is holding on to something like that, you know, there's a tension to hold on to it. So afterwards, there's a release. The body comes into a softness, which creates space. And how much, when we're holding on to that beyond our awareness, how much is that affecting the way that we are thinking and feeling and speaking and moving and relating without even knowing that it's affecting us?
That's wonderful. And you mentioned there, you talked about release, and obviously this is it's a therapy, it's a modality, isn't it? It's a therapeutic practice. So again, like, I hope people watching or listening or catching up on this, I'm the naive person here coming into this. I know slightly more because we've spoken and I've attended one of your classes, but I came, you know, breathwork, everybody's talking about breathwork, you know, it's all over the place. And, you know, I really love the Wim Hof thing. I find that super helpful to bring me out of a looping mind. That's how I find that useful. And so I do that practice from time to time. And I have tried different versions of, you know, there's box breathing. There's, you know, I've tried lots of different things, but they're not a therapeutic practice in the sense that what you're doing is a therapeutic practice, and you're very highly trained and skilled, and you're. I know you can do it online, but in my case, you were in the room. Now, what's the trying to choose my words correctly. I was about to say what's the goal, but you mentioned the release part. Where does the healing come?
So the healing comes in the release and allowing the body to let go of what we've been holding. And then, okay, so let me backtrack. So there's, you've mentioned Wim Hof, and there's so many different ways to breathe. Biodynamic breathwork is very different to other standard breathwork, where you're breathing so much that you do shut down the mind, because you shut down prefrontal cortex and all of our kind of conditioning and all of our all of the ways that we hold back our emotions because we're not supposed to cry. You know, we're conditioned that, you know, we're not supposed to in this particular moment. So when we close this down, emotions do arise, and actually the thinking brain starts to soften as well. But more often what's happening in that kind of way of breathing is that we're taken outside of the body into, in effect, an altered state of consciousness. So this kind of breathing is often really static. Biodynamic breathwork is very, very different in that it's seated in the body. So we need to remain present in the body. We don't want to disassociate. We don't want to be transported outside the body, because if we're not in the body, how can we consciously explore what's there in order to release it? And our body will carry our entire human experience from prenatal, you know, pre-verbal trauma up until, you know, this moment, and our body will hold all of that. And we're so notoriously bad at releasing what we encounter as humans. Animals in the wild, you might have seen on nature programs, or, you know, you might have seen your dog, or even children do it as well, when they've had a scare or a, you know, near-death experience from the tiger or whatever it is. That mammalian response to shake the body and release is inherent in us as well, and we just don't do it. So when we encounter a trauma or a shock, you know, it can be just like one event or repeated traumas. We don't release it from the body, and so we have stress. We layer stress upon trauma, and we have all of these layers that become an armoring, and they're living in the body in tension. We're then living with an activated nervous system. So this is about nervous system regulation. And a lot of breath workers talk about nervous system regulation, but if we're not going to be in the body and actually release what we've been holding in the nervous system, how can we regulate it? A lot of breath work like Wim Hof is constant fast breathing as well, and breath holds, but biodynamic breath work is the heart of it is about pendulation. So we breathe and activate what we hold in the nervous system, in the sympathetic nervous system. And when we breathe, all of what we're holding rises to the surface, but we do it gently because we want to stay within the window of tolerance. We don't want to breathe so fast that what we're doing is triggering all of our trauma, and we're sending someone straight into the trauma vortex, which as a therapist is absolutely terrifying. That, you know, people can go off and do a 10-day breath work course, but they don't know how to hold that space, because it can be that we're triggering trauma. So this way we breathe and we activate what we're holding in the body, and then we start to inquire, because then tensions will start to arise. You know, for example, you started to notice something arising in the chest, and it might have been that you were able to move. You know, in this area, we've got 7 areas of the body that we hold more tension than anywhere else. In this area, the thoracic is related to the heart, and the arms and the hands are an extension of this belt of tension. So how we work through the body systematically, you know, when we're exploring movement, the hands start to go. We might go into pushing. If we're pushing, we can push against something, or if it's in person, we can push against my hands, and we've gone into the fight. People's feet can start to go, and they've gone into a flight pattern. And these are the things that are living in the body, these patterns that have been stuck in the body, that have been incomplete. They've not been complete in that moment in the past. And so in this moment, when we activate it, we can actually complete that pattern and release it from the body. And so when it's released from the body, if it's not fully released and it comes back, it won't come back so strong. And again, if it comes back again, even less so, to the point that it's then fully released. And that experience where the body has been frozen in time in the past from this particular event can actually let go.
Mm-hmm.
And so the healing is in the release, the letting go, the completing of those patterns. And so we don't have to hold on to the intensity of that trauma any longer. And the pendulation is about activating, but always coming back to that place of safety. That the resource, if you remember, we spent time finding that at the beginning of the workshop, the beginning of the session. It's important to have that place to come back to so we can activate the sympathetic nervous system, and then we can come back and pendulate back into the resting state. And we move between the two in the session, teaching the body how to be in a non-traumatized, non-stressed state of being. And that's, the therapy in that as well. The more that we observe sensations and track sensations in the body, the more that we can come closer to uncomfortable feelings and actually sit with those uncomfortable feelings much more able to sit with those uncomfortable feelings and eventually expand our window of tolerance to live with that tension or whatever's being triggered in the body. So the healing is in all of those parts, but ultimately it's about being able to experience ourselves and connecting to feel, to really feel, truly feel what is there in the here and now. And the healing is in that.
Wow.
Feeling the feelings fully, safely, releasing what's not needed.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for you.
Go for it.
How did you feel after the workshop?
Do you know what? I was actually running that question through my head and I don't remember. I remember so intensely that moment, and it was more than a moment. It was a few minutes actually of that. And then I have a regret, but it's one that doesn't have to live forever, which is that I didn't come back. In truth, I think that was a one-off event, and it was fantastic. And it taught me. I hadn't thought that. Obviously, I gave it a name, but I felt very intensely in the moment when you asked that question, like, what is this or where is it coming from? I knew exactly where it was coming from. It wasn't a vague thing, and therefore, like the word was correct. I think I could probably expand on it. I could talk around it. I could do whatever, but it doesn't matter. It felt very, very true.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I didn't finish that work, and I have an intention to come back, and it will certainly be with you, Laura. It won't be with anyone else, to come back and to explore that some more, because and maybe this is an interesting thing. So I have a resistance here. I sort of do and I don't, in that I feel like culturally and professionally, and I think there's something in the way that. So I've been a knowledge worker all my life. So we live in our heads all of the time, all of the time, and we measure our productivity, our attainment, our worth through these things that we can verbalize and that we can count. And then I have always had this instinct in me that there's way more to, in whichever way you want to frame it, there's way more to life, there's way more to understanding. I wrote a post on LinkedIn this week saying that there's a couple of religions that a lot of people, and I include myself in this, believe in without even realizing it. And one of them is scientism. This idea that the only things that matter are things that we can research and count and so on. And the way into understanding that is to think of somebody that you love and to say, is that feeling real? Can you prove it? Well, the third part, no, you can't prove it, but you know it's real. So it's not measurable, it's not countable. I can't measure whether my sense of love for the person I'm thinking of is more or less than yours. So science is wonderful, it's amazing, does great things, but it doesn't tell us everything. And then the other one is materialism, which is similar, only things that we can touch matter, right? And everything you're talking about, well, okay, you can touch the body, but the sensations, they're very, very, very real. The tears, or what generated the tears, was very real, but I can't touch it, can't feel it. And I'm doing the thing that we're talking about here. I'm using words, nice sentences. I'm saying, hey, look at me. I know a little bit. I can use these fancy concepts to escape from actually checking in with the body.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't answer your question at all, did I?
You put your hand on your chest, and this is profound. There's no coincidences. Like if I check in with someone and they go, wow, just we might do this a lot when we're talking about being able to communicate, that their body already knows, this is, you can see this, like this is a referencing the sensation. People might go like this, or they touch their chest, or this kind of thing, and they're symbolizing or demonstrating what's actually going on internally.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a very, very common thing for me to do. My hand is often here. This is what I'm doing. I'm just going to say what came up when you said that, is that I feel like I have a very powerful heart, that by which I mean, I have quite a powerful heart physically, but like in terms of, I allow at my best, I allow my heart to lead the way. Okay. And yet actually I spend a lot of my time more allowing this, and I always feel like those things are in tension. And I have to very deliberately put myself in spaces where I can hear this, or allow expression or creativity or whatever. I have to make time for that. And nowadays I am much, much better at that. I realize it. But do you see this in is there something in the modern world? Is it that we work online? Is I don't know. Was it ever so?
Goodness, we probably did live in our hearts a lot more when we were more connected to nature and weren't in this, this rush to be clocking on, clocking off, with the paid hour, when actually we were, I don't know, even just farming, being in the fields, just being, I don't know. Back in the past, I imagine that we were more connected to our hearts. We live in a society that values the mind and our cognition, and we're also really busy. We've got social media accounts and all of that, and it very much is in the head. But I think we don't value feelings so much. We're very much separate from that. We're conditioned not to people try not to cry at funerals, which is just like, some cultures, they wail and rock and we allow that expression, but particularly as Brits, we have to stiff up the lip, and we really don't express feelings. We're conditioned not to. It is often different culturally, but I think that we also don't want to feel our feelings, because if we've experienced something in the past and we just don't want to go there, then we don't live in the body, we live in our heads, and we can take refuge in our heads and be in thought to avoid what we actually are holding in the body, which is our feelings. If we live in the body, and this is another reason why with the breath, we breathe really shallow. Probably about 90% of the population breathe above the diaphragm into the heart space, into the chest. And when we do that, we raise our shoulders because we're not getting enough breath. We breathe rapid and slow, so we're creating tension in the body, because we're communicating to the body that we're in stress and anxiety. But really, we should breathe deep and slow into our bellies. Well, we're conditioned to hold our bellies tight, have a washboard, flat stomach, full of abs. But really, we want a soft belly to be able to breathe deep and slow. And when we breathe deep and slow, we actually come into the parasympathetic and back into the resting state, and we calm and slow down the system. But when we breathe into our belly, we also feel what we're holding on to. So we tend to not breathe into the body because either it's not the right time to feel our feelings, or we've just got to get the kids to school, or we've got to get the project done at work, and so we don't want to feel right now because we're so busy. So we have to come away from the body and live in our heads. There is that as well, and I think we are becoming a bit more separate to our feelings, and we don't see it as a strength. If somebody cries, you might say, "Oh, don't cry." Well, we're not crying for no reason, and if we don't cry, then it's, where does that energy go? It needs to be released, and if it can't be, then it's locked into the body. We have to swallow that expression, and protect our heart and armor over here. And then how are we then connecting with our environment and our loved ones and our life, because we've protected ourselves by armoring here. And if we're not feeling our feelings, then how do we know what is the truth in that moment? Because the mind will tell stories, and the mind will view our scenario based on the lens that we look through. But what you feel when this arises is the truth, the sensation. Even if you've not named what you were experiencing as grief and just felt the sensations, even if you couldn't find the word to name it, by me directing you to what you feel in there, what you're feeling in the body, if there's a sensation there, you come into contact with the truth of that sensation. And it can be difficult because it can be a lot. It can be that actually we are touching on grief and we don't want to, or we're touching on, a lot of people don't want to express their anger. They're so conditioned that anger is a bad thing, or feel that it's been swallowed so much over a lifetime that if they do release it, then they'll never be able to go back again. We have fears around coming into the body, and so it's sometimes safer to be in the head.
Something I could listen to you all day, Laura.
Yeah, that's nice.
Something that
now, so now, I love talking about it. I think it's a beautiful thing to witness as well. I've been through my own therapeutic journey as well. I trained as a drama therapist. I had to have weekly therapy intensively, and I actually thought about this earlier, because in order to hold space for somebody else, we have to do the work ourselves, so that we, our stuff's not coming into the room, particularly working in the body, just bringing it back to what we're talking about. I need to be able to feel my own body so that I can feel somebody else's. And, you can call it intuition, or you can call it, resonance. A big part of the biodynamic breathwork is about having resonance. And if I'm full of all my own stuff, then there's no resonance. If I'm empty and I've got space, then I can really feel where somebody else's experience is manifesting in their body, and I can feel it in my own. Yeah. I don't know if we've gone off tangent now, because I've been talking, and
Don't worry. It's something that I think is really important for that. I want to use my own experience just to talk about this. Now, I feel as though I am naturally one of life's seekers. I have I've explored all sorts of things over the years, some with success, some with frustration, and so on. And of course, you never arrive, do you? You just it's more layers, and then you find a little bit more. However, I think a deeper understanding in the last few years that the way that modern life is set up, particularly, I tend to work with people that work in business and things like that. Helping those people to understand these kinds of things is hugely, hugely powerful, and it's it can unlock things that the easier access, more cognitive stuff, it doesn't get you to the same place. You need to go a little bit deeper, and But that is scary. And I think I just want to draw people's attention to, when you were describing before, I told you about my experience in the room, and then you described what you observed happening. As you spoke, your care came through absolutely beautifully. And I think this is so important, that if you are going to explore these things, you want to be in the hands of somebody like you know, somebody who's actually properly trained. But clearly, I mean, you care about this so much, and your sort of love for people came through in that answer. And I just wanted to join those dots with people, because I feel personally reasonably confident. I'm fairly brave with these kinds of things. I'll have a go. I will, I've tried talking therapy. I've tried different things. I've done group things, all sorts of stuff. And I will throw myself into them and then go, okay, I'm going to see what happens. I will try this. But it can be scary when you start to get to these places. And for me, like, it's symbolic, but it was very, very real. That hand, that connection. And I would just encourage people listening, if they're hearing this, you can probably go and Google, like, trauma, breathwork, blah, blah, and you could go and try something. But I would just like to encourage people to find a practitioner who will be their guide. And I sense that being alongside, I don't know whether you see it as alongside or how that is.
Yeah, I do. Being alongside was spoken about a lot in my drama therapy training. So I've come to the breath work, which, is working in this way is really, I feel like I've found my thing, my calling. But the drama therapy is there as a support as well. And I think it's given me a real deep foundation to be able to work in this way as well. And coming alongside was something that we spoke about a lot on the course. It's not that I sit over here, and I say this to my clients a lot, that I'm not coming to this as the expert. I'm coming with some tools, and I can hold a space, a really safe space, to meet you where you're at. But you are the expert. You know what's going on with you more than anybody. No one can tell you that what you're experiencing is not your experience. And so I'll come alongside and hold that space. And in the end, it feels like a co-creation. I'll check in all the time. Like I checked in with you. If I'm working with someone individually, there's lots of communication about what's coming up, so that we can really track sensations and start to allow the body to flow. So yeah, so I come alongside, and I got a little bit emotional when you said that about my care, because I really do. And that is at the heart of no matter what therapy someone's going to go for. That's the one thing that makes the massive difference, is having a practitioner that they feel safe and comfortable with, and seen and heard. And, a lot of our traumas are relational, so it needs to be healed within the relationship as well. People who have come to me who have been through talking therapy, I feel like they get a lot out of this work, because they've already been in the therapeutic space and found their feet in it, and know that actually they can go to therapy and I'm going to say not feel ashamed, but that's, because that's people's experience a lot. They don't want to tell someone that they're going to therapy. But what we understand of stepping into a therapy space, if we say we're going to talking therapy, well, we know where we're at with that, because we're going to sit across from each other or next to each other, however we sit, and we're going to talk. Well, that we know. To come and do something like this, and I really respect you naming that you stepped into that place of unknown, because it really is. We could talk about this for hours and hours, but there's no way that someone can really understand what it feels like to be in that space and do this work without experiencing it. And part of something I've wrestled with over the last, since I've started, is finding the words that I can use to describe what I do, so that people don't feel like they're stepping into the unknown. But there's no amount of words will make up for actually that experience. And maybe there's something in that as well, that we need to face of fear, that fear of stepping into the unknown, then, ultimately that's what we're working with all the time. It's the fear in the body that keeps us locked.
It's so true. And as you speak as well, I would just love to emphasize again the profoundness of that, and that I've tried differently. I've not experienced anything even close to that, if I'm honest. And also just to re-emphasize like the safety with which, so it's and actually obviously I didn't speak to other people in the room. Not everybody had the same sort of, the experiences were very different for people in the room going through exactly the same practice, because we're all different. But the room felt very, very safe. It felt I've been through other experiences that my brain can't quite remember, but I can think of being in things where something's been unlocked, and then I've been left on my own, and that didn't feel safe, and that was not nice. That was good. But in this case, I've I can remember kind of walking out of the building and walking up the road and going, wow, what just happened? But I think my mind was quite empty at that point, which is why there's not much to say. But that safety was absolutely there, because I'm aware that I'm quite comfortable talking about my life experience and being a bit vulnerable and talking about grief and talking about fear and things like that. And in this space and the spaces that I create, I want to do that as much as I can, because I feel like doing that helps others just to take a breath. I just did it myself, and step in and maybe try. But also, I just really want to say, because I'm talking about grief and trauma and crying and so on, I don't want it to sound unsafe, because that's not my experience at all. It's the opposite. There we go.
Well, actually, and expressing grief and those tears, it doesn't have to be that that's a bad thing or a negative thing. Actually, this is about releasing what the body's holding, so that we can live in connection with ourselves and others without the reactivity or the tension or feeling like we're having to hold back. It doesn't communicate safety. If you didn't feel safe, you wouldn't have been able to express it.
Exactly. I've got one. I think we should probably, I think you and I could probably talk for hours, but we should probably bring this to a close soon. But there's one thing that's just come to mind there. It's something that a pattern that I've noticed with, and I'm not trained in any kind of somatic approaches, but I do encourage people to, I signpost certain things at different times, and particularly I'm not trained in like exercise or anything like that, but as part of like checking in with people about how their life is going, I will encourage them to explore like what makes them feel good, or makes them feel connected to themselves and to nature, or to whatever. And we go back through time and say, when was the time when it felt great, and what were you doing, and what was leading up to that, and what were the contributing factors, and so on. And quite often people will work with me and they'll say, oh, I wish I could exercise more, and it'll be part of the my life's not quite right thing. So I think it's so important. When I hear that, I tell people, okay, so what does feeling good about your body look like to you? And I'll just fire. Is it running? Is it this? Is it that? Until they go, no, it's this. Okay, go. How do you build that into your day? How do you get that in early on? But in part of doing that, something that I've noticed is a really common theme with my clients is that when we talk about the body, they will say, it's here. Their voice is, and I feel like I have a little bit of that myself, which is odd given what I do for a living. But how do you think about that gesture?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you've pointed this out, because this is one of the 7 belts where we hold more tension than anywhere else. And even though the first belt is the eyes and the head, this belt here, actually, there's the throat, and then there's also the jaw. And when we work with them together because they're so closely related, because they're the last place that we can express anything that's arising from the body. We clench our teeth. People who grind their teeth, there's something that wants to be expressed. Particularly rage and anger we hold back. here. The throat, we hold back these muscles here, run down the side over the throat. They're like reins holding back expression that's arising from the body.
Mm-hmm.
And this area is so heavily conditioned to, being right or wrong, or, are we saying something that's hurtful, or we in the past, we've been told to be quiet when we wanted to say something, or, we swallow our expression all the time. And so when we come to actually using our voice, there is a tension in here. There's an emotional tension that manifests as a physical tension. And I mentioned having nodules on my vocal cords, and I now know so much later how there was a tension in my voice that created an ailment. I had to have an operation, and we don't do the operation now because you can lose your voice totally. But yeah, something had manifested there from me feeling, I don't know, insecure about expressing myself vocally. So we hold a lot here. And I worked with singers who feel like they're losing their voice, or they're not able to sing to the best effect because there's something that's held back there. And it's an emotional tension that's living in the body. Just, same as the other emotional tensions in the body, but this one really is our creativity, and it's the last place we can vocally express. And probably the hardest or the hardest area to work with when we're trying to encourage the voice. It's really difficult for people to start making noises in the work. But when we do, it becomes a lot easier. And then when we've released something here, then maybe we can communicate in the outside world a little bit better. And if we are an artist and we're using our voice, then there's less tension in the vocal cords. And if we're, you're using it as your craft as well as a coach, and there's still a part of you that needs to say the right thing at the right time, and how much of that is a story that lives in the body from the past.
Yeah, absolutely.
Putting your hand up in school when you're young and then getting the wrong answer, and somebody laughing, can manifest as a covert trauma, and it can manifest in here that actually we never speak up again.
Yeah.
So we talk about trauma, it always sounds like a really weighted word, but trauma is a massive spectrum, and I don't think any human is immune to experiencing trauma. At some point, something happens that might just be a really little small trauma or a massive trauma, but it manifests in the body in much the same way. Holding back or closing off the heart, or into the belly, if we're not using this area of the body and we've got tension we're holding there, we can have digestive problems and all kinds of gut and IBS. And if we're holding tension in the body, there's also the cortisol that lives in the body from the stress from being in that fight flight. And we know of cortisol and the connection to cancers, and the list is endless really. So we come back to the breath and come back to just allowing ourselves to feel the feelings, so that they're not holding us in this this place of not being in our authenticity and not in flow. And the flow is really important as well. If you imagine like an earthworm, it has rings around it, and the earthworm moves in this wave flow. Well, that's how we should move as well, like an earthworm. And the belts of tension in the body are like rings of tension, and if one of them is tense, then that flow is not going to happen. We're stuck. And so that energy that needs to move up through the body, from the base of the spine up and out into expression, it doesn't flow. The energy doesn't flow. The kinetic energy doesn't flow. So there's no movement. So we need to free these areas of the body so that the body can flow, so we can live in freedom. I feel like I'm moving my neck.
I want to as well. And there's a part of me, and this is a great example actually, where obviously because my role here, so we're trying to have as free flowing a conversation as we can, but also my role is to keep an eye on the time, to make sure that I've given you an opportunity to say the right things, and have a half an eye or an ear to people that might be watching or listening. And so as this goes on, I'm very aware that it gets more and more constrained, simply because that's not what I'm doing right now. And however, I have other ways to go and like release that at different times and do all that. But I think that's a lovely way to bring it home. Actually, it's just to say, you know, that last explanation that you gave there of the belts, and I think when you the way that you recognise that so much, like so many people that I speak to make this gesture, they say, I can't find my voice, or I feel like I can't, you know, whatever. They have different ways of expressing it. And what you've explained beautifully there is that this modality could be the thing that they need to really access whatever's causing that and then to release it. So, and also maybe just say, anybody that's watching here now, if you've done what I've done, and I've been doing this intentionally on occasion to draw attention to my body and say, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, because I'm hoping that we've encouraged somebody else to go, oh, well, actually, I'm feeling it here. Or, oh, when Stephen did that, yes, I know what that means. Or, yes, I do this too. Or, you mentioned the IBS and the gut and so on. If you've recognized that in yourself, then that means Laura could be the person to help you. In which case, where would they go, and how can people find you?
So the Meraki Way is my company.
Magically, just put that back up there.
That was genius. So yeah, that's my website, and on there my website is actually just being rewritten at the moment, but on there is still the information about the drama therapy and breathwork. It's just being updated, but there's a book now button, so you can book a call with me. I always have a call with somebody before I work with them, unless I'm doing a workshop. I run workshops, and then you can find those as well on my website, and you can put yourself on the mailing list, and then I can keep in touch with you with workshops. I always do one workshop a month online, and then have other things in person as well. But to work with me individually, I always meet with someone, because it's really important that I can hear what's showing up in their lives and then really speak about how we can meet that. But I think it's important for someone to get a feel for me as well. Like we've said before, it's about really feeling comfortable in that, the connection of that relationship. So I would always do that first, and then if I've got space, I've got a practice in Manchester that I work in person, and then online as well, various other times throughout the week. I've got more availability online because that's a bit more easier to fit in. But
wonderful.
Yeah, so yeah, if you're interested, you can just book a call, and there's no obligation if you wanted to just speak about where you're at. I'm always happy to talk about this really powerful work. It blows my mind, and yeah, if someone wants to just speak about it and just to test the waters, then I'm always happy to speak with no pressure.
Lovely, wonderful. Well, I'm going to close this out now. I just want to say, Laura, I am so happy that I reached out to you and that asked you to come and do this, because my instinct has turned out to be correct, that you are a wonderful person to speak to. Your soul comes through when you talk about this work, and what you're doing is a real gift to the world. And I would just love to encourage people. I can't emphasize enough how safe it is, how powerful it is, how fun it is as well. You know, it's not all like it's not all staring in the dark recesses of your soul. Like, there's so much energy and power in what you do. And when we've listened to you
about it, you know, we could be in a talking therapy and we have to rehash all things, or we can just be in sensation, just feeling what's there, and with no analysis, no judgment, no expectation, just feeling the present moment. I mean, that's where life is, right? In the present moment, not living in the past or worrying about the future.
There we go. If there's any way that I can support your mission, I would love to, because you're a beautiful soul doing wonderful work, and I hope this leads to more people finding out about what you do and to good things in the future. So I'm going to click the button that says end stream, but there we go, Laura. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you as well, and you're very easy to talk to, so thank you for making this as easy as possible. And and let's do some more breathing.
Let's do that. Okay.
Thank you.